you. I'm told Tanzania and China were almost in the same level of economy in the 1960s. However, China is now one of the strongest economy and powerful country in the world. What should we learn from this?
Yes, and I don't think, people say Tanzania and China were at the same level of economic development in 1960s. I disagree. China has been China for many years. It has a history. China did trade with Africa many years. They traveled all the way to Bagamoyo here. They were more global without saying so. They traveled around the world. They had a civilization of their own with very strong traditions in China. They are making pots and so on. Very many things. So at independence, China was ahead, not very much ahead of Tanzania, yes, but technologically, they were ahead. Why? We were not able to build the railway. Even today, we are still using Chinese technology to build a railway here. So technologically, they are more advanced than we were. They were more organized in their societies than we were. They had very many groups, but they were also producers before. So culturally, they were stronger. They are not divided in so many tribes as we are. Even if there were many groups, ethnic groups, but they were still Chinese, living very far, and usually resisting foreign influence. They did that. So it is true, when I went to China in 1968 for the first time with Mwalimu, there were independent China with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai and their government and their party. But they were a nation of bicycles. They had very many bicycles, very wide roads, but very many bicycles, but highly organized. Lunchtime, they are all out on the bicycles to go for lunch. After lunch, they go for a rest. They work for 7 hours, then they go home. They were at that time using a bicycle, producing lots and lots of vegetables. So even on diet, they were ahead. Peking was not what it was now. It was almost a village. But then I went to China 2017, almost 40 years after. It was different. When I asked them, they changed roads, vehicles. And I asked just a driver who was driving me, not an official, what happened? He said, we work very hard, we listen to our leaders, we listen to them, and we do what they tell us to do. And on a critical note, he said, but you people, you talk too much. You don't listen to your leaders. You don't do what they tell you. And he said, you know, we listen to them. Why? He said, when a leader tells you to do this, you don't know, he has had so many opportunities to think about what to tell you and why. So why don't you carry out what when he makes a mistake, he knows it is a mistake because he had a target which he has not been able to meet. So he knows that the mistake and he changes, and he will come and tell you why he has to change. That's the difference. They plan what to do. They implement what they decide upon what to do. Talk less, do more. Organize better. That's the difference. And one reason Mwalimu admired the Chinese, which there was admiration, it is that they were frugal, they plan, they care about the welfare of their people. And that's why they are where they are today. Technologically, we are backward, more backward than the Chinese in the modern sense. We've made some progress, a lot of progress too. Education, health, services to our people, vision, attitude. We now know that we are part of the world. We are ready to learn from China, from America, from the rest of the world. And that's what we are doing. And you can see, if you follow what our president is doing here, she's ever teaching us about what it means to be a nation, culture, attitude, work ethics, planning. And I'm sure after some time, we'll become much better than we are today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, what was the economic commitment of President Mao?
And Tanzania have always worked to abolish poverty. China has succeeded more than Tanzania. China has succeeded to abolish what they say they call extreme poverty. It's no longer there. We still have it here, but we're also struggling to abolish extreme poverty, especially in the rural areas, to make sure that our people, they work and they have an income in their pockets which they can use to buy or to pay for their needs. That's one. Now, at independence, Tanzania was still technologically very backward, so in the agricultural sector, when China came here, they helped us build adequate infrastructure, initial infrastructure. First, agricultural implements, so ubungo farm implements, pangas, hoes, sickles, trolleys, very simple field tools for Tanzania. Unfortunately, we are no longer producing those things. I don't know what happened. And they took us to the farm, to irrigation. In very many places, Ruvu, Barari, so many other places, they did that to help us to be food sufficient. And they help us also put up certain basic factories. What is it? Urafiki, textile industry there, to produce cloth. And we did that for several years. And we exported. We were able to dress our people. Those were very basic economic activities which China helped us, including, of course, transport, the railway, and the rest of it, and training. Our people went there to train. So they did help Tanzania briefly on the economic field from a very almost poor base and to what we are today. Unfortunately, most of those initial industries are no longer there. We lost in our irrigation schemes, we lost in our industrial capacity, we lost. Textiles are no longer there. We're importing quite a lot, even from China. So I think we have to reassess ourselves and see what we can do. We cannot go back to the base because we are somewhere else. But we have to industrialize. We have to improve in agricultural capacity to produce and process our agricultural goods in our industries, because you cannot industrialize. No country has been able to industrialize without improving in the agricultural capacity. There is no country in the world. If you cannot manage your land, produce what you need, and process in factories what you need and what you must export to earn foreign exchange, you'll never be a modern country. And that's what we are struggling to be now. And fortunately, China is helping us today, and more than in the past. And for that, we are grateful. But you can't be a country without protecting your people, your resources. China did help us in our security, generally, at different levels. And in our liberation, they gave us arms. And we did very well with those arms. So we are where we are today, and we are still with our friends, the Chinese. And we are actually now also trying to persuade the what we call the capitalist countries to help us to be self-reliant, to reduce our dependence on the West, but also to reduce our dependence on China. We don't want to continue being a burden. Now our relationship is more commercial than aid. We are struggling to be more self-reliant than we were in the past.
Thank you. What were the legacies that Nyerere wanted us to follow regarding relationships he created with different nations like China?
China is a nation of human beings, and Tanzania is a nation of human beings, and the world is the world of people. And as I said before, Mwalimu believed that humanity is one, and you can see we're becoming more and more one. When we talk of globalization today, we are talking about just like that. We are human beings, we are one, we are interrelated at all levels: social, cultural, political, economic. This phone, this instrument you're using, Chinese are producing this. So we use them now. I can use them to call my friend in China, my friend in America. So we are together. You are using them. We are, to that extent, we are all human. We take advantage, and we must take advantage of all those who have developed. When China develops as mankind, Tanzania is developing as mankind, because we use the results of that development for our own good also. So we are one. But we have to develop together in freedom. Tanzania doesn't want, I think even that's what President Xi Jinping is doing. We want one world developing together, one people developing better, but certainly we don't want one country, one people dominating the others or dictating their terms on others. We want to develop together in equality and in freedom as human beings. That's the legacy which Nyerere left behind, and I'm sure that's what Chou En-lai and Mao Zedong wanted. China is there, They are now engaging on, they are in BRICS. China is BRI, Belt Road Initiative, initiated by President Xi Jinping, that we are all one belt, one road. Let's share in policies, let's share in currency, let's share in economic development, let's share a people to people, you see, relationship. It must not be just government to government, but must be to people, relationship. That's what we should do. That's the world we should build. One world, one people, diverse, more advanced, less advanced, but we're all moving together in freedom. And in development we call people-centered. Development by the people for themselves, and a leadership which struggle to build the capacity of the people to develop themselves. That's the vision, that's the legacy. One world, undivided. One world, moving in equality and freedom. Even when you talk about this thing, you're talking about climate change. Climate change, we have the resources in the world. We have misused them. So we've tilted the ecology of the world. And so we now have a problem. So to plant trees, we are just cutting. But you can use gas. But we must all afford gas. Must not be stop people cutting trees when you cannot, they cannot use gas because gas is expensive. Or when you want to develop a gas industry here, well, somebody will make it difficult. You see, you want to develop a gas industry, indigenous, some investor will come, or just to make profit, and the gas becomes very expensive. There are people cannot use gas. So we have really to think, how do we use our resources so that, and how do we develop them so they become usable and accessible to all our people, whether rich or poor. That's the challenge. That's the economic challenge. And that's the challenge about peace in the world. When you have, and I don't have, and what you have, I also need it. And when I try to get what you have, and you stop me from getting what you have, then you are asking for a confrontation. So you people who are ambassadors, you have a lot of work to do, you young people. Make sure that there is in the world a just economic system which serves all the people in their diversity. Short of that, and in that one, take an example from China. China is doing very well, promoting development of all. And that's what we call here socialism. Life is social. It's not for you alone. Life is for all of us. That's what socialism means. It's social. Human beings are social together. Individually you can do something, but you can't do much. Together, there is no limit to what humanity can do and achieve. The world is there for all of us, and the resources are there. The challenge is how do we organize ourselves to move together for peace and unity in the world.
Thank you. How is globalization, especially from China, affecting moral values and tourism economy in Tanzania?
Globalization?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, globalization means together. When you are interact together and when you become interdependent and you struggle to move together. So you learn from China, China learns from us. These days we do even more. These days we marry from China and the Chinese marry in the world. So we're beginning to produce children who are really international. They are not necessarily Chinese, they are not necessarily Tanzanians, they are international children. Sometimes they talk Chinese, sometimes they talk Swahili. We learn Chinese, and Chinese learn, and the West, they're also learning our languages. So language is becoming a factor of international, a factor of globalization. We're beginning to share language, and we're beginning to share culture. Technological development, say in agriculture, the way we produce things and the way we process things, that is, dictates a culture for all who participate in that kind of process. So we are becoming technologically advanced, moving away from the way we used to do things. And this we are becoming one. And we share the goods of that technology. That affects our culture. So our people here, we buy these phones. And we always, our young people are there. Oh, they're talking all over. You don't know what they are talking about. They're very enjoying it. That's becoming culture. You see, in the past, you couldn't, in the street, you wouldn't find people talking alone. These days, when you move around, everybody is talking. When even you are alone, so you discover he has a phone, or she has a phone. That's a different culture. People talking to phones, to three phones. And the communication is becoming just taken for granted now. So that affects culture. Dress affects, we are beginning to dress using dress produced in China, Chinese style, making hair. So technology is bringing the world, humanity together, and people are using it based on the environment in which they are. Best example is China. In the 60s when they came here, the Chinese had only one dress. They had two. A suit, a simple one, which they would use when they are not working. You see, they go out town and they normally went into groups, never alone. They went into groups. One nice dress, the Mao one, and a working overall. These days, if you look at the Chinese, they're not the same. They've changed tremendously. They dress beautifully. You see? They dress beautifully. They make beautiful dresses. They make beautiful goods in their industries. You know the industries I saw. So technology, science, changes in technology and science is bringing the world together. And we are beginning to share needs together. Our children are going to go to school together. Many of our children are going to China. They are going to learn productive ways and so on, flying aeroplanes, making repair, and that will affect our relationship. And so the world is going to be more and more and more one and united. And language, we are now learning Chinese, China are learning Swahili and English. We are going to have maybe a few languages. Maybe our vernacular language will disappear. and our culture change. So globalization means we are now one family than we used to be before. What we're trying to do is to manage our differences, especially the economic ones, to bring us on the same table. Principles. And then you struggle to practice, to live according to those principles. In the same way as China did. You maintain peace. It can't be 100 peace, because human beings, they always want more. So that's how we kept it. Principles and life on the basis of those principles, and rights for everybody and opportunities for everybody. And that's what Tanzania is trying to do. We're struggling. We don't want anybody to be left behind. Thank you.
The contribution of China in the tourism sector in Tanzania is minimal compared to other nations such as America and Europe. Despite our long-term relationship, what needs to be done to increase tourists from China?
Relations between China and Tanzania may be long-term, but it is really recent. In 1960s, after we had become independent. Before that, China was not here. And I don't think we had any other official relationship, because we're not, the British were here, the Americans were their allies. They did not like China, so China wouldn't be here. China came here after independence, after Tanganyika became independent. So it's only, you can say, a relationship was about 61, 62 years old. But for the Americans and the British were colonialists. They are governed us here since World War I. They've been here. Our masters. They introduced a political system and an economic system, and we are, even today, part of that economic system. You could say for the Americans and for Western Europeans and the British and so on, Germans, Tanganyika was their home, because they colonized us here and they stayed here. If you move around, you will see the infrastructure they left, offices and so on, and the rest of it. And the economic infrastructure they left behind. But China began coming here after it was invited in the United Nations. That's one. But two, China has remained isolated for some time. The West isolated China from the rest of Africa. China is just beginning after it has built her economy. She's now a strong economic base. She's now coming to the rest of our countries in Africa as a free nation, economically strong, able to help more. They've always been helping, but they're now able to help more than they used in the past. So you can see them in the construction industry, roads, railways, airports, and the rest of it. In agriculture, in relationship in universities, through universities, and civil society like ourselves. Our relationship, foundation, Chinese government, the Chinese embassy here, and therefore through them the Chinese government, Chinese people is growing, is very strong. So now the Chinese are also at home. We have been friends, but they couldn't come here. They were building capacity. You know, tourism is a factor of development. When you have savings, you have something to do there, you go there. So the Chinese have a little bit of savings. This building is built by CRJE. It's a loan. CRJE has been here. They built Tazara. They built our parliament. There is now economic infrastructure. Chinese can come and develop that more and more, trade. But they can also come and relax. They can also come for tourism. Relax. And my belief is that more and more Chinese are going to be able to come here because their economy is growing, is expanding. There's going to be a bigger section of the middle class in China who have money. I want to go there as a tourist in China to move around and see the Great Wall and the rest of it. So it is historical. The reason is historical. They are not part of this country. Those who were here, they did not want Chinese here. They were economically not so well developed. Now they are highly developed. They have greater capacity to come, to save, and come for tourism. And I believe more and more are going to come. They are also putting up their own properties here. They are building here. They are putting their own buildings. Their own buildings, they'll come and rest in those buildings. They're not going to be just passers-by. They'll come and stay.
How is Tanzania's traditional leadership being integrated into modern-day governance?
Nyerere abolished the traditional leadership. Chiefs were traditional chiefs, traditional leaders, because of and those were basically tribal. After independence, they began to disintegrate a little bit. So now the government has decided to go back a little bit, to modify, to allow chiefs. These are traditional leaders, and we call them traditional leaders. Leaders of our communities to receive even policy issues, instruction about implementation of policies at that level. We are going back there. And even the modern leadership structure which have been instituted, they work very closely during elections. There are people, ordinary people, and usually the government will go for them, the parties will go for them, to help them mobilize the people to support policies or support parties.